Lupe doesn't have to be in the room to be within earshot. In the bathroom, I found a note taped to the medicine cabinet mirror.
Gone for groceries and DVDs. Movie night tonight. L.
I reached through the shower curtains and wrenched the cold water handle. Tonight was the big night. I had a lot to do, and I couldn't waste time trying to put a Freudian spin on today's bad dream, even if there was a good chance I would get my heart ripped out before the sun came back up. T.S. Eliot's Little Gidding begins with, "Midwinter spring is its own season, sempiternal though sodden towards sundown, suspended in time between pole and tropic." The dead of winter in Louisiana is something like that. Short sleeves one day, a sweater the next. Tonight, the weather hadn't made up its mind. I buckled my shoulder holster over a sleeveless tee and shrugged into a flannel shirt, but left it unbuttoned so I could reach the Glock 20 loaded with silver frag ammo under my left armpit. Opening the screen door, I stepped down and walked barefoot through the January chrysalis of my new backyard. The brown, withered grass sighed beneath my feet. Not quite dead, not quite alive. Like me, in a sense. Except that, come true spring, mid to late February, the lawn would burst forth with new life while I would be, well, what? All flesh is grass, but where most folks end up succumbing to the lawnmower of life, some of us cheat the mulching process and come back as ghastly perennials. Considering the last 18 months of my so-called half-life, there was probably a fertilizer analogy I could come up with, but I didn't want to go there. I stepped on a mushroom and felt it dissolve between my toes. Forget the green stuff. A pale, nocturnal parasite was probably a better analogy for my condition. That's me, a real fun guy. Ba-dum-bum. By now you'd think there would be a clear-cut diagnosis of my actual condition. But no, I was left with two starting presumptions. One, that I actually died in the automobile accident that killed my family and was reborn in the hospital morgue. Or two, that I was only presumed dead while Virus A from Basarab's blood put me in a healing trance, lacking the competent factors of Virus B that resided in the old vampire saliva. The infection started converting my body into something new, neither fully human nor technically undead. Add to either scenario the subsequent contaminants and bloodborne pathogens from my encounters with Cadith Bay's Tannis leaf extract and the demon-laced blood of Elizabeth Bathory, well, the either-or factor became rather hazy. And while the distinction seemed important to some, I had to wonder, in the end, did it really matter? My wife and daughter were still dead, and the Las Vegas domain was booking odds on me attaining the same status within the month. But this wasn't the night to think about depressing things like vampire vendettas and daymares concerning misplaced hearts. It was an evening made for romance. A sliver of moon hung over the graveyard like a leprous grow light in death's terranium. The wind had freshened, bringing the odor of distant rain and nearby rot. I could see a storm was finally brewing, and that meant tonight had to be the night. If Lupe and J.D. ever got back from Blockbusters, that is. I reached into my pocket, fished past my grandmother's ring, and retrieved a small vial of mentholatum. I rimmed my nostrils with ointment before continuing to the far end of my property. 1 minute I was alone, the next I was outnumbered 3-1. You might think that the ability to see into the infrared spectrum would give me all sorts of advantages, but infravision is worth diddly squat when the creatures coming at you have no body heat. The dead were a dozen yards away before I finally saw them. 3 corpses shambled toward me, their clumsy, unbalanced rhythms reminiscent of a trio of winos in fully South search mode for the nearest liquor store. The one in the middle looked freshly dead, while his wingman had been in the ground a great deal longer. They stumbled to a stop against the waist-high stone wall that separated the cemetery from my backyard. Unfortunately, this wasn't a dream. The stench of dust, dirt, mold, and chemically retarded decomposition continued its forward momentum, slamming past the menthol barrier and